what came with COVID was a huge challenge for all of us. While most of our workforce was working from home, and in a warehousing operation, people working from home, your merchandisers working from home, your supervisors working from home is not something possible. It's a lot of people intensive work, a lot of labor intensive work which happens, which you physically need to do and perform. But what was important was, how do you bring in that insight? How do you bring in, connect those processes together so that there is a digital trace which stays behind, and all the processes, somebody sitting at home somewhere in the world should be able to trigger something, and then everything else should be taken care of. So only the physical process which was required to be done within the warehouse is supposed to be done. There as well, how do you make it more smarter? How do you make it more intelligent for people who are working, rather than, because one of the big challenge was the churn in the people was very high. And it's important that you don't leave your processes to be people dependent. And hence, being able to, one is automate, the other is digitize, and the third is making it intelligent, so that you are able to prompt this guy rather than spending days and hours of in terms of training this guy and waiting for this guy to make mistakes and then learn again. So being able to prompt him to do things, make it more system driven, more assisted rather, and make the processes more foolproof was important. And that's where technology has actually helped us to be able to bridge the gaps, bring people together, bring in the data points so that you are able to forecast better, much shorter period of time. You are more flexible, you are more agile in terms of how you are able to do a lot of those things, rather than being able to, and if there is a glitch, this is an operation, problems will happen, glitches will happen. How are you able to see it quickly and react to it much faster, rather than being able to hear about it after the 100th mistake which would have happened. So in the first instance itself, if there is a mistake which has happened or a problem which has happened, how do you catch hold of it and be able to correct that process so that you don't repeat that? We will all make mistakes. We will have problems in the process, in the systems, in whatever we do. But then the important thing is, how do you foresee that, correct that, and then keep moving forward, and also think of how can you avoid the future mistakes which could have been emanating because of this. That's where technology has actually helped.
Basic.
I think you still need to stay lean, because if you're not lean, you cannot be agile, and you will not be able to bring in a lot of flexibility. But in spite of being lean, you need to work on one more aspect, which is the backward supply chain. It's a function of backward supply chain in terms of availability. And if you are able to reduce the time to market from a backward supply chain, that's an area that we worked extensively. We used to do a pre-season planning almost 6 to 8 months ahead of the season. And imagine you have bought something 6 months ahead, and you are predicting that that's going to be the trend 6 months down the line. It's going to be a disaster more often than not. If you are able to shrink that entire timelines to maybe 20, 30, 40 days from concept to shop floor, you have your plan, you have your option plan ready, you have your assortment plan ready, but you don't create the final product. You only deliver or decide on the final product or the final design much more closer to the time when it should be in the shop floor. I think that's with that agility, that aspect of it, in terms of being able to work much more closer with your factory, with your manufacturing institutions, has become the key piece in terms of success, because that's where we are able to solve a lot of these problems of being, one is reducing the stock levels, because we cannot afford to have higher stock levels, because fashion is kind of a perishable.
Yes.
If fashion goes out of trend every few weeks, which means you can't produce too much, which means that you have to produce in smaller quantities and keep repeating it if it is working, or keep replacing it if it is not working. That's the key, and hence reducing the cycle time in terms of manufacturing was very, very critical. From the order to the in DC, that cutting that timeline was very, very important. One more aspect which came into play was there was a huge cycle of sampling process in fashion. If you look at that's again where digital or our technology played a very, very important role, because there's so much of an exchange of ideas and thoughts which happens. That entire process more or less is becoming much more digital now, though it is not yet not 100%. But we are happy to say that at least at Bestseller, we've been able to reduce a sampling to almost 50%, which means that most of our samples are now done digitally rather than physical samples, which has cut down the entire cycle time itself. It's not something which has been solved yet. It's an ongoing process, but reverse logistic for sure is a big challenge for all of us in both ways. Either it's a B2B return or a B2C return. Even a customer to us return or a business to business return, both have their own fair share of challenges in fashion, because it has to go through the entire process of quality check, of refinishing, repackaging. All of those processes have to be done. If there is a button which is gone, you have to fix it. If there is a stain which has come in, you have to remove it. So going through that entire process, it is a manufacturing process, and doing that in a warehouse facility, it's not an easy task to do. Getting those skill sets within the facility, in the warehousing facility, is not an easy thing to do. We are trying to solve a lot of these processes. We've been able to solve a few of them, but not been able to do this 100%. We are in a process of solving them, but this is a notorious process. 40% of whatever we ship out to our end consumers actually comes back as returns. That's a lot of merchandise which is coming back, and then handling and repackaging and making it available for sale again at the fastest possible time. I think that's a tough ask.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Ranjan, for your views.
Thank you so much.